In a recent Wall Street Journal editorial, you said that this new Consumer Financial Protection Agency wouldn't protect us from another financial crisis and could actually be the cause of the next one. Why did you say this?
Well, first, there's a conventional wisdom that consumer protection issues cause the current financial crisis. If you look at the evidence and sound economic theory, what you see is that that's not the case. In fact, what caused the crisis more than anything else was misaligned incentives and consumers rationally responding to those incentives. When consumers rationally respond to incentives, that is not a consumer protection problem. It might present a safety and soundness problem, but it's not a consumer protection problem. Misunderstanding the causes of the crisis then could lead regulators to pass regulations designed on the basis that consumers are sort of hapless victims of lenders, but instead set up a whole new set of incentives that create new opportunities for consumers to take risks and to perhaps recreate exactly the same problems, perhaps even worse, between borrowers and lenders that caused the current crisis.
Senator Dodd recently suggested that perhaps the CFPA should be housed in the Federal Reserve. What do you think about this idea?
The most important thing when it comes to consumer protection is first to recognize that yes, we need a streamlining and improvement of our consumer protection system. We've got a system of disclosures and regulations that are designed by and for lawyers and regulators and not for real human beings. So I think the first thing we do need to have is a system that makes it easier for consumers to shop, promotes competition, and promotes consumer choice. The second thing to understand is that in the banking system in particular, there can be a trade-off between consumer protection on one hand and safety and soundness on the other. One of the problems of a CFPA type institution is that they have already indicated that they would promote consumer protection even to an extent that might endanger the safety and soundness of the banking system. So for instance, the CFPA would have the authority to ban terms that it, in its narrow parochial view, thought were unfair to consumers, even if there was some risk-based justification for those terms. So I think that the idea is sound to combine consumer protection with safety and soundness under the Federal Reserve. I think it would be equally valid to combine consumer protection with competition as they do at the Federal Trade Commission. What is most important, though, is not to have a standalone, self-financing bureaucratic institution that would generate its revenues from its enforcement actions and that sort of thing. That's just a recipe for an unaccountable Frankenstein bureaucracy that would end up hurting the economy and hurting consumers in the long run.
And what ideas would you identify as the main principles of real regulatory reform?
We could think of consumer protection in two different ways. We could think of it as what we could call market reinforcing regulation or market replacing regulation. Market reinforcing regulation focuses on the idea of helping consumers to choose the products that they believe are best for themselves and their families. It goes to the promotion of competition, consumer shopping, comparison among offers. The other view is a view of a market replacing regulation, which basically is a paternalistic approach that believes that consumers cannot be trusted to know what is in their best interest. I think that if you look at the structure of CFPA and you look at the powers that this institution would have, it's a really classic example of the second. Not only would they have the power to ban fraudulent deceptive practices, which everybody agrees we shouldn't allow that, they would have an expansive power to attack what they perceived as, for instance, abusive practices. Nobody knows what that means. No one could possibly know what that means. But what it does suggest is that there are practices that consumers might choose, or loans that consumers might choose that were not fraudulent or deceptive, but which some bureaucrat in Washington might say after the fact, well, we think that loan is unfair. We shouldn't allow that sort of loan. We shouldn't allow you to have that sort of credit card or that sort of car loan or that sort of a mortgage. And it's a very different sort of thing, and a very different relationship between consumers and their regulators than the traditional approach we've taken to regulation in this area.